You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor, subscribe to the channel, leave your comments below, and be sure to smash that like button. LSU wraps up the 2024 season with a win in the Texas Bowl over Baylor, 44-31, a game that was not close. Baylor got within 14-7 in the second quarter. They scored in the first play of the second quarter. After that, they never got within a touchdown again. Even when it looked like they might threaten at the end of the first half, boom, Xavion Thomas, kickoff return for a touchdown. Tigers went right back up by 20, and they just rolled in the second half. The win-loss result of a bowl game does not always equal success or failure the next season. You could look at any example you want to prove or disprove that theory. I've used this one a good bit. Nick Saban in his third season in Baton Rouge. They were 8-4. They go to the Cotton Bowl, play Texas, lose to finish 8-5. Oh, the horror. A 5-loss season next year. Natty. 2015, the LSU Tigers played in the Texas Bowl, blew the doors off of old Patrick Mahomes and the Texas Tech Red Raiders. A year later, they lose the opener at Lambeau to Wisconsin, and within a month, Les Miles is fired. So it's the result of the bowl game just it doesn't really tell you anything about what's going to happen the next season. Of course, you would always rather win, and LSU did in this situation. But for me, it was more about the individual performances coming out of this game that were encouraging as we look forward. After the game, Brian Kelly talked about Trey'Dez Green, who was probably at the top of this list. And he talked. This is number 2. He talked about Trey'Dez in a manner that really puts into perspective his performance.
You saw a true freshman in Trey'Dez Green, who, in many ways, how do you put it in perspective that he made you forget about Mason Taylor, who is an incredible player because of the plays he made on 4th down and 3rd down.
He made you forget about Mason Taylor. Mason Taylor? I mean, you were talking about the greatest pass-catching tight end in LSU history. But he's not wrong, because that was a giant concern. With no Taylor and with no C.J. Daniels, who would be the security blanket? Trey'Dez Green caught 6 passes. 5 of the 6 came on 3rd or 4th down. His first reception was on the opening possession when they faced a 4th and 5. Boom, 6 yards, moved the sticks. So, undeniable. And by the way, the one reception that Trey'Dez had that was not on a 3rd or 4th down was in the second half. It was a 1st and 10, 21 yards, his long reception. So Trey'Dez was awesome. 6 catches, 53 yards, 2 touchdowns. For what it's worth, Mason Taylor had 2 touchdowns all season. Trey'Dez had 2 in the first half against Baylor. Also, there were only 2 games all season where Taylor had more receptions in a game than Green did against Baylor. Against USC, he had 8. Against UCLA, he had 7. There was a couple other times he had 6, but that's what Green matched him with. So if we wondered if Trey'Dez could play attached tight end, he did. By the way, the other thing that might have been most impressive about Green, yes, the pass-catching component, but you had to play him attached so you weren't predictable by personnel. And Brian Kelly gushed about the preparation that Trey'Dez made and did throughout the dozen bowl practices.
Trey'Dez is an incredible competitor. The work he put in the bowl prep was second to none. His mindset, his want to go in there and mix it up and run block. As you saw, we didn't treat him like a wide receiver. We treated him like an attached tight end. I mean, he lined up in the core. He lined up in the slot. And I said this to you folks, we weren't going to treat him differently. We were going to treat him like it was Mason running that position. And, he had to get sandpapered a little bit in practice. I mean, he went home a couple of times, and I'm not sure that he made it past 6:30, 7 o'clock at night. He was sore. But that was just what his commitment was. And pretty proud of him.
Should be. It's another reason to feel super optimistic going into next year, because now you're adding Bauer Sharp, who is another attached tight end. And think about all the time that Kelly wants to use 2 tight end sets. Now you can. You can feel like Trey'Dez Green's on the field, and you are not predictable by personnel because he'll run block. Chris Hilton is another one that deserves all the flowers. 4 catches in the game, all 4 in the first half. He averaged 28.3 yards per reception. Again, illustrates and justifies and validates all the conversation we had about Hilton after his injury in fall camp, because we talked about him so much in fall camp because he looked awesome. And you've seen it now over the last 3 games. Touchdown against Vanderbilt, 2 touchdowns against Oklahoma, was a breath away from 2 touchdowns against Baylor, but he was awesome. And now you think about that guy returning, in addition to Aaron Anderson, Xavier Thomas, Trey'Dez Green. Oh, by the way, you had Nick Anderson and Berrien Brown. And yeah, you feel really good about that group. That doesn't even include the freshmen who redshirted this year. Guys like Kylan Billiot, Jelani Watkins, who could add even more depth. Kyle Parker coming off of injury. Yeah, I think LSU's receiving core, their pass catchers, with Nussmeier slinging it, you feel like you're in good hands. Congrats as well to Garrett Nussmeier, goes over 4,000 yards passing for the season. The only other quarterback in LSU history to do that, the great Joe Burrow, who threw for 5,000 yards, like 5,600 yards, actually, something ridiculous like that in 2019. Hat tip to the offensive line. You're down 3 starters, only 1 guy in his natural spot. That was DJ Chester. No sacks, only 3 TFLs for a total of 3 yards lost, and only 3 quarterback hurries throughout. They chipped on every play, but that is a really good sign for 2025. You bring in Braylon Moore, who's going to play center. You bring in Josh Thompson from Northwestern, who can play guard or tackle. I've been told there's another silent commit at tackle on a current playoff team. Who maybe there's a little bit more starting there. We'll see if they can bring that one home. But even if not, that's 2 or 3 offensive linemen out of the portal, in addition to Tyree Adams, Paul Mabenga, Bo Bordelon, who played well, Cohen Eccles, who rotated at right guard, DJ Chester, who started every game for you at center, could play guard, Weston Davis. And then you're bringing in 5 stars like Carius Kern and Solomon Thomas, who might be plug-and-play, ready-made interior players. The point is, you're giving Brad Davis this big ball of clay to mold next year. You may start only knowing Braylon Moore is going to be your center and everything else is up in the air. But my goodness, look at the pieces he has to work with to put that puzzle together. You should feel really optimistic about that offensive line. Defensively, the Whit Weeks injury sucks. Brian Kelly did give an update. Actually, Brian Kelly said post-game that it was a dislocation. But Wilson Alexander tweeted on Thursday an injury update. Now, this was not confirmed by LSU, but Wilson tweeted an update that Witt underwent surgery on Thursday. Here's the tweet. To repair a broken fibula, did not suffer ligament damage, which is the great news. Expected to make a full recovery in a few months. So the thought of having Whit Weeks back for spring, very much realistic. And that's a huge exhale moment. You know, when you look at linebacker, LSU didn't add a linebacker in this portal cycle, which tells you with Whit Weeks, West Weeks, Devon Keys, Tylen Singleton, Charles Ross coming in, that's 5. Then Harold Perkins coming back, and I've been told Perkins is going to play star, but if you need him to be versatile, he can be. It tells you they feel good with the linebackers they have, the fact that they didn't go address that in the transfer portal. So, and you look at this team, while I don't think anybody is going to throw a ticker tape parade or be super fired up that LSU beat Baylor in the Texas Bowl. Winning a game to finish the season is far better than going into the offseason with a loss. And more than anything, you can look at what's been built. Top 10 recruiting class, the number 1 portal class in America. You're going to finish that with a safety and possibly another offensive tackle. You're going to go hire a tight ends coach, which whomever you hire, there's always good vibes around hire. So that's going to be lauded whenever it happens. You're going to be a preseason top 10 team. You've got the best quarterback in the SEC returning. Jalen Milroe's going pro. Carson Beck is going pro. The expectation is Quinn Ewers goes pro. Jackson Dart's out of eligibility. You're going to have the best quarterback returning in the SEC next year, the number 1 portal class. You will be a preseason top 10, possibly top 5 team next year, but certainly a preseason top 10 team with all these giant expectations. That's going to be an awful fun way to go into next season. So a fun way to end this year for LSU with the big bowl win over Baylor and all the good vibes going along with it. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.